Greetings Exiles, I'm Cod Raziel, and joining me today as always are Sir Reginald Amadeus Fortescue III and Frank. And today we're just going to go over what we've seen about Incursion and how it would apply to Righteous Fire. The reason I'm focusing on Righteous Fire is because I've done a lot of focusing on Righteous Fire recently, and well, I intend to do more focusing on Righteous Fire, although it won't occupy my entire league this time. So starting out, let's go over some of the gem additions that may actually benefit us, although all of them are kind of situational and may be difficult to work into our builds. First up, we have Vaal Impurity of Fire. Now while the damage portion of this doesn't really help us at all, you also have the reduced fire damage taken. So this will sort of give us a little bit of extra regen because we're reducing the fire damage we take, and it would be a decent substitute for Vaal Righteous Fire if you weren't using that for whatever reason. Next we have Charged Traps. Now Charged Traps doesn't seem like it'll benefit us much, but it is a pretty decent way from the looks of things to generate frenzy charges. So I will be trying this out and seeing how it functions with Righteous Fire. It's likely that the trap throwing speed just won't cut it, and this won't really work so well. And lastly we have the Chance to Ignite support, which has been renamed to Combustion. Now this reduces the fire resistance of enemies who have been ignited by the skill it's attached to. Now this would be rather difficult to use since we'd have to deal fire damage with that skill to ignite, or use one of the uniques to make another type of skill ignite, something like Stormfire or Rimburn. So while it's not looking extremely useful for us yet, I'm sure there will be a number of ways that will come up where you can use this extra minus 19% fire resistance to your advantage. This will be specifically useful on things like the Shaper or the Elder, since I'm pretty confident that much like Scorching Ray and Elemental Equilibrium, this will not affect bosses any less than it affects normal monsters. So while none of these supports will go into any Righteous Fire build, there will be a few Righteous Fire builds out there that will work these in for decent to moderate benefits. So next up we have one single patch note which has added new corrupted implicits, and now this means quite a few things for Righteous Fire because we have seen that there are some interesting options. First of all, we saw a corrupted amulet with a level 23 Purity of Fire skill. Now this would be pretty damn useful because getting level 23 Purity of Fire means occupying your gear in some way, either by using an Empower or by putting it in a +2 or +3 ring, and generally it's one of the chase things to do, and now we have a new way to chase for that level 23 Purity of Fire. Next we saw a belt, the String of Servitude, which has an implicit modifier of increased maximum life. Now this is great, we can always do with more life in our Righteous Fire builds. However, while that was posted on Reddit, Bex made a comment that you won't be able to get triple endurance charges. Now what this means to me is that either the +1 endurance charge mod is being moved from belts, or it's being removed completely. Either way, this will likely negatively affect a few Righteous Fire builds, since getting that +1 endurance charge was another chase thing you did on a decent belt. But time will tell how this affects us. Next, we have a massive disappointment, as these uniques were quite an enjoyable and different way to play Righteous Fire. First up we have Stormfire, which I've only really used in 2 builds, That was the Ascendant and the Elementalist from my Righteous Fire project last league. Now, Stormfire used to increase burning damage for each enemy you'd shocked recently. So if you could pile on a whole bunch of shocks, you could get massive damage increases into the thousands. But they have now changed it so that if something is already shocked, it doesn't count again. So you'll hit the enemy once with this new thing, you'll get the 6% increased damage, and then as long as you continue hitting that enemy, you won't get that 6% increased damage from that enemy again. So this is actually really awful for the Ascendant now, and as such, the Ascendant that I made is completely destroyed. And next, a unique I've been using for a very long time is the Diodus Infernal Axe. Now this was increasing burning damage enemies took by 100% if we could chill them effectively. Now over time I had come up with a few ways to do this, and the most recent was the Elementalist that just did it with Orb of Storms, and it resulted in a massive damage boost. This is no longer the case. From now on, Diodus will deal increased damage with Ignites on chilled enemies. So this weapon is now effectively useless for Righteous Fire. Bummer. Lastly, we come to the biggest change for Righteous Fire in 3.3, and that is Vaal Righteous Fire. Now, it used to be that Vaal Righteous Fire dropped you down to 1 health and did a massive burst of damage, but now it functions a bit more like Righteous Fire, in that it removes a percentage of your life all at once, that being 30% at the moment, and it deals 161% of that loss up to 180% of that loss per second. It also grants the more spell damage modifier that Righteous Fire grants, and it stacks on top of Righteous Fire multiplicatively, so it'll give you a massive boost if you're using something like Scorching Ray or Blade Vortex. This will be the go-to for most Righteous Fire builds, as it boosts your Righteous Fire damage in a pretty consistent way. Vaal Righteous Fire now also gains increased burning damage per 1% quality, so Righteous Fire will now increase its own damage instead of just increasing the spell damage. I'm assuming this quality effect takes effect on Righteous Fire as well, otherwise everyone will be looking for a Vaal Righteous Fire gem instead. And that is about it for what we know about Righteous Fire in Incursion. My first build was going to be the Ascendant. Obviously it will now not be the Ascendant, but I will be doing the Chieftain, which I recently just did in solo self-found. I'm interested to see how that build functions in a trade league, so it's a good league starter, and it should be awesome for endgame once you get everything set up, so I'm just going to try that out, and from there probably do something that's not Righteous Fire, because let's face it, I've been doing Righteous Fire for about 5 months consistently now. So it'd be nice to revisit one of my older builds, maybe the Dark Pact Totems, or any one of the other Siege Ballista setups. So with all that said, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and for joining me on the big Righteous Fire experiment from Bestiary League. And I'm looking forward to what comes in Incursion. I should hopefully be playing a bit more than I was, and maybe I'll even get a chance to stream this time. So from myself, Sir Reginald Amadeus Fortescue III, and Frank, we'd like to thank you for watching, and good luck, and stay juicy, and see you in Incursion League. And like and subscribe.